Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You're listening to the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's episode is a guest episode, and today's guest is Jake Jorgovan. Jake is the founder of a company called LeadCookie. LeadCookie helps B2B sales teams generate leads through done-for-you LinkedIn prospecting. So what that means is they help you focus in on the right people that you should be connecting with and engaging with on LinkedIn. And they go ahead with their team and do those connections, do those outreach, do those engagements for you. Some of the data they have is that on average, their customers book anywhere to 20 phone calls per month. And a lot of the work that they're doing is 100% human. Nothing is automated. All of it is human-driven work, which is really, really important for a number of reasons. Number one, because all of your connection requests and all of your interactions should be human. And number two, frankly, from a technical standpoint, LinkedIn is really hardcore about knocking out people's profiles on LinkedIn if you're using automated tools. And so we actually talked a bit about that in my conversation with Jake. So in today's conversation that I just wrapped up with Jake, we covered a number of different really specific strategies when it comes to LinkedIn and how to use LinkedIn for engagement and lead generation. So a few of the topics to listen for is number one, first thing we always got to do is get really personal and think in terms of small segments. So the example that we use as a running thread is if you were targeting a specific type of customer, then it should be thinking about it in the way of, hey, I'm looking for COOs of manufacturing companies in Chicago or the Chicago metro area. The more specific you can be, the smaller the segment, the better that your engagement campaigns are going to do. And secondly, he talked about what he calls the 3 factors of relevancy. So if you're sending out a message to somebody on LinkedIn, what are those 3 factors of relevancy for that person receiving the message to feel like, hey, this message is for me? We then talked about some of the technical aspects of LinkedIn in terms of how many connection requests can you send on a daily basis. There's a certain limit within LinkedIn. We talked about the difference between using LinkedIn and their separate platform called Sales Navigator, which is an additional subscription and is designed more for sales research and sales activity related work. We talked about what he referred to as kind of a 4-step process in terms of your engagements with your new connection. So a 4-step process over 30 days. So not a lot of touches. It's almost like a mini campaign, a mini outreach campaign that starts with a connection request and then goes through these 4 messages, these 4 outreach steps that you should take with your new connections, just to identify whether or not somebody you've connected with is potentially a lead now or not. And if they're not, then we also talked about what to do over the longer run. And how do we think about using LinkedIn, not just for leads today, but building up an entire bank of people and connections and target buyers in our market that even those that aren't ready to take action with us today may in fact engage with us down the road because now they're part of our network. So talked about that and a whole lot more in the conversation with Jake. Really enjoyed the conversation. A lot of the conversation focused on core principles around what you should be doing regardless of the market environment. Whether you're in a volatile market or you're in a market that's just going up and to the right, as we saw, and obviously we've transitioned more into a more volatile market of late. The principles are still the same. Like, you want to be personal, you want to make sure you're targeting, you want to make sure you're looking for engagement. You shouldn't be pitching or spamming anybody on LinkedIn. It's just a matter of looking for people who you can help or you think you can help, and identifying whether or not those people want to have a conversation with you. It's pretty basic sales stuff, but it's easy to get lost in the world of like, hey, I want to get lots of messages out there, or I want to get no messages out there because it doesn't feel right to prospect right now. And so regardless of whether you're in a market or a volatile market, it's important that you're doing your prospecting and you're doing it the right way. In the conversation with Jake, I think we went through a lot of really specific tactical tips that will help you feel confident that now is the time to be prospecting if you're doing it the right way. So that's it for now. That's my conversation with Jake. Let's head over to my chat with him. Jake, welcome to the program. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on here, Scott.
Yeah, 100%. So listen, it's as you and I were just discussing, it is interesting times, extraordinary times, and I want to get to the meat and potatoes of the topic. And so what I thought would be really interesting to help people understand who you are and what you do with your company, just for context in our conversation. Maybe you can just kind of describe when people ask you, what do you do? How do you answer that question to folks?
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur that actually run a few companies. One is a content marketing agency called Content Allies, but the one that is most relevant for today is actually a company called LeadCookie, where we are basically, we do thoughtful outreach to connect B2B companies with their ideal clients. And that tagline changed to thoughtful outreach due to just the massive amount of spammers. I'll admit several years ago, we were part of the noise in the world of all of the mass kind of just cold messaging that was going out there. And we've really had to evolve as the market has evolved and cold outreach has evolved in general to become a higher quality provider of doing outreach and figure out how do you even do high quality outreach today when there's just so much terrible stuff out there on LinkedIn and email and everything. And so that's what I do is I run the company called LeadCookie is what the outbound company is called.
No, that's great. And it's interesting, like you were saying that you had to pivot a little bit or do a better job with some of the ways that you were going about outbound. It's like, regardless of the times, like right now, obviously, we're recording this, it's April 2nd, and it is the most lot of questions on, should I even be doing outbound right now? And if I am going to do outbound, what's the right way to do it so that I can genuinely tell somebody, look, I want to help you solve your problem. We think we can help, but not do it in a way that appears that I'm either leveraging the global situation or coronavirus or whatever economic situations out there in a way that makes me seem like I'm an ambulance chaser of some kind. No pun intended, obviously. So you mentioned about like this, there's spamminess out there. And frankly, like I still feel like 95% of what I get in my inbox is spammy and crappy. So even though you've evolved, the market hasn't. So what is the first thing you would tell somebody? Maybe we start with that as a topic. Like if somebody says, look, I know I could help companies now more than ever with this, in this change of environment. They're changing people, they're changing process, they need to change their technology. What am I supposed to do? Like, how do I think about doing outbound in a way that is appropriate to the person and appropriate to the situation?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, and we're running often 40 or 50 accounts through our company, and so we're doing a lot of outreach. And so when COVID hit and everything, one of the first things we did was really just look through everything and first update messaging and to like just be conscious and like mention the situation, not try to like hijack it, but be aware of it and kind of adjust. And that was one thing. And then I'll admit there are campaigns that we pulled the plug on. Like there were people that were promoting live events. There were people that were, inviting people out to coffee and these things that like, there was like a lot of adjustments that had to happen for the current times. And so, but the interesting thing that we found, and we have like a mastermind group with a bunch of companies out here where we're all doing outbound prospecting. And what was interesting is that across all of us, so all of our accounts, and then all these other people that are running accounts for other companies, we're not seeing negativity in like responses. And as long as you're like conscious and you're not, running some campaign that probably should have been shut off a few weeks ago, we're not seeing many people being like, oh, this is insensitive. And so I think that's a story a lot of people are getting in their head. And we're actually seeing like an increase in engagement on LinkedIn just because like people are home a lot. And there's a lot of people where like their regular work days are disrupted and projects are on hold at big corporate companies. Like tons of things are on hold. And so it's been this interesting thing to realize and just see that through the number of accounts we have and then all the other agencies that I kind of do a mastermind with to like see that this is like a general widespread trend where like engagement is actually up among this. Not necessarily always closes, people might still be reluctant to buy right now or, anything like that, but it's still, people are still receptive to prospecting. And like, in some cases they even have more time than they did before. So.
Interesting. Yeah. So the project's on hold it just creates a vacuum of time and people are working from home. And I think with social networks in general, whether it's LinkedIn or, Instagram, I think people are looking for ways to stay connected. And so LinkedIn being kind of the de facto business platform to do that. Like what's everyone else doing out there? What's everyone else saying? How are people responding to situations? That's kind of where I have it open all day. I mean, I'm just like, I keep LinkedIn open, but I don't keep my email open. Like
Hmm.
LinkedIn is like my window to the world, not my email, not my inbox. I mean, if I'm not on the phone with clients or teams that want help, I'm probably on LinkedIn just seeing what the threads are like. What are people talking about? And so I'm curious about the actual outreach. So if people are not responding negatively or they are engaging, how would I think about, like, if it is a cold outreach, if, let's say I get really targeted and niched and say, look, these kinds of companies we can help a lot right now. What is an appropriate approach to someone that does both address the situation, but also identifies whether or not this person is open to some sort of conversation or engagement?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I see is that people oscillate on like two extremes with LinkedIn or email outreach of like, all right, I'm going to personalize every single one and like do this by hand, which they do for a few days and then they get busy or exhausted from it. And then they stop doing like every single one personalized by hand. And then the other extreme is they're like, all right, I'm going to go get some automation bots or like automation tool and just blast, thousands of people at a time. And so like there's these two extremes of highly personalized and then just like mass blasting and spamming people. And I feel like people struggle to find, okay, what's like the actual healthy middle ground?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the big things that we've done to kind of evolve as a company, and what I try to recommend really anybody, whether you're running your own internal sales organization or anything like that, is to take that volume approach, but then don't run just massive campaigns of the same thing. Build a ton of small segments. So think of like, okay, if like our target is, marketing directors or COOs, say we're doing like COOs in like the Chicago area that work for manufacturing companies or something,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like get that niche down instead of going COOs nationwide. Pick COOs in an industry and then potentially even in a geography if you still got a pretty big niche with that. And like when you reach out and say, hey, I was browsing, COOs in Chicago area, or something, and I thought I'd reach out to connect here or in this industry. And like when you start to add like three like factors of relevancy into your message, you can still do that volume approach. It takes a little bit more planning, but you're able to, make these campaigns and like the relevancy, and it looks, very much hand done, and you can make it look very casual if you just really build small targeted niches and get really
Mm-hmm.
focused there. And so that's what we've been kind of doing as ways to do that. We'll often sometimes even filter people by specific job titles or keywords that may be in their profile, like a HubSpot certification. Or we've done really well like filtering people that were interested in blockchain or like some sort of technology or something. And so you kind of think of how can I build like a small segment, and then how do I write a messaging just for that tiny little segment that includes as much relevancy. And I feel like is this like great place to sit with outbound right now, where you're still getting leverage, you're still getting kind of volume in there, but it's not as spammy. It's much more relevant, and you can still get really great results with this. So that is this interesting middle ground that we've been finding with.
Dude, there's some like some really strong nuggets in there. So one, obviously, like segmentation. We talk about niches all the time, and especially a lot of people listening to this show or work at startups or tech companies, and like everyone knows. I know I should focus on a niche. I know I should niche. I know I should focus on a segment, but then they don't. Right? It's like too easy to get a big list. I know I should niche down to manufacturing companies in the Midwest, but gosh, I could also solve problems for the telecommunication companies and healthcare systems and this or that industry, and so they don't. And now I think it becomes more important than ever to get niche. One, because like frankly, not the whole market may not be available to sell to right now, right? If you're trying to sell to healthcare systems, unless you're like very specific for the problems and the like the literal triage of issues that they've got right now, like if you're trying to sell like an appointment setting platform and for a hospital system, I've come across a company that does this sort of thing, and it's like a massive efficiency gain, and it's like an important tool. It's just like not a thing right now because all those doctors are just not seeing patients, right? So getting really niche is important anyway. So I like this idea of getting really small. And as you were describing, like COO of manufacturing companies in Chicago, my brain was almost thinking about like a Facebook targeting mechanism. Like if I was running an ad on Facebook, and I know we're not talking about doing that, but that's what they do. That's what you do in Facebook to run an ad effectively. They want you to target it down. and niche it down. And there's a reason why those ads work better than others, because then there's somebody who gets those 3 factors of relevancy that you talked about, like, oh, that's for me. I'm a COO of a manufacturing company in Chicago. 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. Those are my 3 factors. This message must be for me. Jake actually looked at my profile. He actually read my website, and that's why he's contacted.
Yeah,
So those are really important mechanisms here to stay focused and get personal.
Yeah, and the cool thing with that is when you have that segmentation, like you can just get really like find interesting ways to make it personal. Like one of the things I ran toward like management consulting firms in Chicago. It's like, Chicago is one of my favorite cities, or something. I just like started my message off like that, because it really is one of my favorite cities. And it was just interesting, like you kind of pull in these like kind of not salesy statements, but you just put something in there that kind of looks human. I did another campaign in Nashville, like, oh, great, spent several years in Nashville, love the city, or something like that. And like these like odd little statements like that I would kind of like put into the mix would just like massively, again, increase the conversion and stuff. And sometimes people would mistake that and think I was local, but like then they're engaged in a conversation already by the time they realize I'm not actually local. But like it was these interesting, like adding those like statements or just kind of those ways to kind of weave things into the mix, I think is just another really good way to make it look a bit more personable and things like that, which you can also do once things are a bit more segmented as well.
Yeah, and nothing here that we're talking about is like brand new. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden in a post-COVID world, you should be doing small segments and personalization and being relevant to people. It just becomes exacerbated now, because if you're used to doing this like bloated batch and blast kind of plan, it's easy to sort of like, okay, we sent out 1,000 messages, we got 3 calls out of it. I guess that's okay. It doesn't really matter. But now if you send out 1,000 messages and they're not targeted, you look horrible, because if you're inviting people for a coffee or a live event, or just like, hey, click here to book a demo or something, whatever it is, and it's not relevant, then you look really bad to people. So like, you should be doing this stuff regardless. It just becomes magnified in this environment.
Yeah, and like I've been in this outbound industry for like years, and I've seen it evolve, and like I'm very much a believer that it is going to just get harder and harder. It's going to go smaller batch, have to be more personalized, more segmented. Over the past 3 years, LinkedIn has dropped their allowed daily connections from 175 a day down to 75 per day. And in some cases, like they're even throttling that back more on some accounts. And so we're seeing these we are in the weeds with LinkedIn, and we just see every little platform change, and we're just like, oh, it dropped down to 125. Oh, drop down to 100. Oh, drop down to 75. So like this trend is happening, and they're going to just keep, like, they know that there's tons of spammers out there. And so you've got, just this giant platform that controls so much B2B communication, that it's just going to keep kind of pushing down the threshold and everything there, and forcing higher quality, more thoughtful outreach. Like that is where this is all going to end up going in the next few years. So spamming is just not even going to be a thing in like the next few years, or it's going to be done at a very low volume. And at that point, it just wouldn't make an ROI or make sense to do.
All right, folks, we are off and running in my conversation with Jake Jorgovan. And one of the things I wanted to do is, Jake and I talked a bit about the current market environment, and things are volatile. And for some companies, they're slowing down and struggling. In other cases, companies are pretty stable and actually accelerating based on where you are. And one of the things that I've been doing here with our team over the last few weeks, really kind of since, mid-March, when a lot of the COVID stuff hit, is doing a much better job of offering help to people who want help navigating through whatever your situation. If you're slow and struggling, you're trying to get things moving again, or if you're stable and accelerating, how do you use this current market environment as a way to grow your business quickly? And so there's a couple of different ways that we're doing that. One is through our Sales Qualia Facebook page. A second is through office hour calls that we're running. A third is through workshops now that we're running live online workshops. We got a number of different opportunities to work with us. Most of those are completely free. You can just go to the Facebook page and check out content. You can sign up for office hours and just get on the spot help. The workshops are really, really low investment, just to help you figure out how to plan, prioritize, and position your startup in this environment. And so rather than me send you to a bunch of different places, check out the Facebook page here and the office hours there and the workshop over here, the very best place to go is just go to our website, go to my website, salesqualia.com, Qualia, Qualia.com. If you haven't yet downloaded a copy of my most recent book called Stop Hustling, Start Scaling, number one, you should grab a copy for sure, because it was a number one new release on Amazon last year. It gives you a complete framework that you can be using for building and utilizing a sales process, which is more important now than ever. Secondly, once you download the book, you'll then get added to our email list, and we'll notify you of all of these different ways that you can get help. Secondly, if you have already downloaded a copy of the book, or you have a copy of the book that you purchased, then the other thing you can do on salesqualia.com is just add yourself to our email list. It's really easy. Just click a button, throw your email address in there, and we'll make sure to keep you up to date with all the stuff that we're doing. So we want to help as many people as we can through what are trying and in some cases an interesting time for others. And the best way that we found to get the word out is for you to just jump onto that email list, and we can keep you up to speed with all the stuff that we're doing and how we can help. So that's it for now. Looking forward to seeing you on one of those different ways to give you help, whether it's on the Facebook group or Facebook page, the office hours, the workshops, whatever that is. Definitely want to help you out if I can. And in the meantime, let's head back to my conversation with Jake. Yeah, that makes good sense. So maybe we could take a couple minutes and to kind of dig into some of the technical aspects of like how, like from your, experience working within the platform for so long. Like I didn't even know. I knew there was some throttle in terms of connection requests. I didn't know what it was. I mean, we'll usually, if I see, like, we'll do a segment of people. We haven't been doing them recently because our connection requests, like right now we're just trying to service the people that we already know.
Yeah.
Like we're just reaching out to people that came to our workshop over the last 3 years. Like, hey, like what are you working on? Like, do you need some help? Can I send you a training? Do you want to join up office hour calls? We're just starting from that kind of what we call inner circle, people that already know me and I already know them to some extent, or like Alchemist Accelerator. I've been a mentor there. So we're just like reaching out to people that are an alchemist. Like, hey, I've been a mentor. I've been working with some teams. Do you need some help? So we haven't even gone sort of like any sort of cold outbound. But there's a case to be made, obviously, for some situations where you need to do that. I mean, I'm not a B2B tech company. I'm not looking to get 10 new customers a month. So what are some other technical or platform aspects of LinkedIn that people should be paying attention to around how that platform works, whether it's connections or how do I get my post seen? How do I get my messages seen? How do I get a reply? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think a big thing for tech companies to be aware of a few things. So it's probably about 6 to 8 months ago, LinkedIn made this shift to the LinkedIn Sales Navigator inbox. So now you have 2 inboxes on LinkedIn. Everyone's like, this is stupid. Why do you do that? Well, if you cancel LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you lose all those messages. So they're actually locking you in to their product for life, pretty much. If you want to keep your sales conversations in history. So that's an interesting one, because we actually saw someone cancel and then like lose a lot of that information in prospecting messages, which is not a good thing. So that is one kind of crazy thing to be aware of with it. And
could I just really quickly, for people that maybe are more earlier with LinkedIn, like maybe they've heard of Sales Navigator, how do you describe the difference between LinkedIn and LinkedIn Sales Navigator?
Yeah, the core difference is it's a different interface, and it comes with more features and a lot more search capabilities and a lot more insights into companies. But really the biggest thing is that it lets you do more volume. If you start trying to prospect on LinkedIn, I think if like you do more than like 50 connections in a week, then they're going to say, hey, it looks like you're using this in like a sales capacity. You need to sign up for LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So the biggest thing is volume, but it also comes with a whole different interface that makes it a lot faster, a lot easier to use. And you can get super detailed search to so you can build that segment of, I want, COOs at manufacturing companies in the Chicago area. And like, you can get that narrow and specific with Sales Navigator. And that's a lot harder to do within the standard LinkedIn search interface.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've done that. We have save search. You can save those searches, which is also something I found is really useful. And so when you're sending messages out from Sales Navigator, they come back into the Sales Navigator inbox. So it's almost like a mini CRM in a way. And then there's really no way to get that data out in any kind of technical way, because they, as far as I know, have a pretty tight arms around their API to pull that out. So like you said, it sits in there.
There's some updates from them that they claim they're going to be putting out a Salesforce integration soon. which we'll see. That's been kind of on the talks for a while, but hopefully there is. But yeah, it's not the easiest interface to do, and I hope they build it into more of a CRM platform in the future. I feel like it should. It's called Sales Navigator, and it just gives you a giant inbox. It's like chat. It's like text messaging. All your prospects is basically what it feels like. So
yeah. So how do you like if you're sending out some connection requests or you have some conversation going there, like what do you recommend in terms of moving the conversation from Sales Navigator, where you risk losing messages or people might not be checking the LinkedIn inbox every day. So you might get a connection request and maybe some back and forth, but now it's like 3 days go by, they get busy, they haven't checked their inbox and sort of lose that momentum. At least that's what I've seen and some other clients have seen. So like, do you have any suggestions on how to kind of migrate from, okay, I message you here in this platform, but let's kind of get out of here if we can?
Yeah, I always use a Calendly or a booking widget. If the next step is a call, that tends to be the easiest, because trying to schedule back and forth on LinkedIn is even worse than email, because I don't even check it as often as I check email. So like trying to go back and forth on a scheduling through LinkedIn is definitely a challenge and something that I do try to avoid. So booking widgets are very good. And then if not, sometimes people will give you their email or their phone, and those are the next kind of best things to try to get it there. But often I actually find a drop off with trying to move it from LinkedIn to email. So if I can just get all the way to a call through LinkedIn, that tends to be the kind of, I think, best scenario. Yeah.
Why do you say, hey, what's your address? Let me send you people to reply as, hey, let's just grab a time on my calendar?
Yeah. So with that, I would say in some cases, you'll actually see 3 little icons like a phone, a website, and an email that'll show up on the right side of Sales Navigator. People can turn those options off, but sometimes you actually can see their email there, which is helpful. But in some case, so those can sometimes be cases used. Sometimes it's their personal email though. So you just kind of got to be cautious and it's not their work one. But I would say that, yeah, a lot of times, I typically will try to move it toward a call, and then most of the time I only move it to email or phone I only move it to email if someone requests that. And then otherwise, if they give me a phone number, then I'll try to just call them directly or something there.
Okay.
So.
Got it. So don't use email unless they say to use email, especially if it's like a Gmail address.
Yeah, I would say so. Just sticking to LinkedIn tends to just go a bit stronger.
Okay. And I know you and I are on Zoom right now as we're chatting, and we both, I think, realize that there's sort of a slowdown in the video.
Internet is overloaded.
We both just turned off our videos. The internet is overloaded, and Zoom in particular. Though I'll say, like, my experience has been, I've seen very little difference in performance on Zoom over the last 3 weeks, which has been pretty remarkable. Okay, so we started talking about Sales Navigator and then moving conversations out, and we were talking about some more of the technical aspects of like how to use LinkedIn. Requests of 75 a day. Is that something that you recommend, that's like I should be connecting with people that are in my industry that I don't know and then trying to get a conversation going? Or what's your perspective on how to use connections and connection requests? Is it just like get as many people as I can in my network and then figuring out what to do with them then? Or is it, obviously within reason if you're doing a segmented market, or do you have a different sort of perspective on that?
Yeah, so it very much depends on the goal. I'd say, there's some people where they're just sending connections and then they're going to publish content with the goal of getting that seen. And so that might be the goal, and kind of like a brand awareness, a longer term play if you're not trying to be too salesy or direct. So there's actually a good number of people doing that now because they don't want to pitch or something, or maybe their offer is, around events or something that is just not ideal at this time. So they're just connecting and they're not trying to take it any further. But a standard campaign for us will be an outbound connection request on LinkedIn. And then when someone accepts it, we'll send a second message, typically kind of doing a probing question, maybe offering a resource, maybe making an ask, something there, but trying to be something helpful and kind of valuable there. And then we'll send 2 more drips typically over the next 30 days, trying to engage. And so that's kind of like a standard, I guess, prospecting flow on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of different angles you can take with that. We've offered resources, case studies. We've tried to just kind of collect information and gather kind of details from people. But that kind of standard connect and then, 3 more drip messages over the next 30 days or so is, I guess, a flow that we use if we're trying to specifically prospect. Again, if you're just trying to a brand awareness play, you might not add those extra messages because it's a lot more work. But that's kind of the standard flow that we'll often kind of take our clients through.
Got it. Yeah, and I remember reading that you've got a really fantastic ebook on the how-to guide for LinkedIn lead generation, which we'll make sure people know how to get a copy of that. And it looked like in that ebook you had like a couple of different, almost like we think of it as a call to action continuum, meaning like a slider. Like some calls to action might be really strong, like, hey, would you be interested in jumping on a call? And others were just more like, use that phrase, probing questions, just to see if somebody wants to engage with you at all. So throughout the course, so that kind of four-step process, like connection request, probing question, and then 2 drips over 30 days is just designed to see if somebody wants to engage or not. Is that kind of the premise here without being overwhelming?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, it's just all depends on your specific offer, the strategy, the urgency, what angle you want to take. Just some examples, like we had a company that did, consulting actually on Salesforce.com. So they were like a Salesforce consulting partner. And so they would reach out and ask, on a scale of 1 to 5, how happy are you with like your current Salesforce instance, or how you're using Salesforce in your company? And if people responded with anything less than a 5, they would say, okay, well, what would it take to get that to a 5? And then they can start to kind of like, open a gap and open a dialogue there. We've had companies that maybe specialized in, a certain type of software development or tech, they would reach out and ask, thoughts or kind of something topical around that technology. We've done a lot of that with kind of like blockchain or React or these languages, or when people have kind of products surrounding these specific technologies, people that are into tech tend to like want to hop on and start conversing around those kind of things. So those can tend to be really good ways to kind of get conversation started. And we've also done like, hey, I've got a case study on how we accomplished XYZ result for someone that looks just like you, kind of in that kind of framework. And those are all like different kind of angles that we'll take depending on each situation. And those, there's no perfect formula, but some mix and match of those for each individual client situation. If you've got a good value proposition and something unique, then like typically some mix of those will kind of end up working pretty well.
So a question I have about kind of the psychology behind the person receiving the connection request and the person receiving these messages. And maybe just because I come from a sales background where like, I'm going to send this probing question or a, hey, 1 to 5, how happy are you? And it's almost like, all right, I know I'm sending a question that's looking for engagement. And I know that that person that I sent this to probably knows. So he knows that I know that he knows, kind of thing. And like, is it still too obvious, or like, it's a good question to ask at any point, like how happy are you? Or, would you want me to send you a case study? Because you're just looking for engagement. But what would you say to somebody who says like, look, I know I should be doing those things, but it just feels too obvious to me that I'm trying to get into a sales conversation without just flat asking somebody if they want to book a call?
Yeah. In some cases we've had that where like, in some cases just like, here's the value proposition. Do you want to know more? Like that can work really well. And just being really direct in that sense. If you've got a good value proposition, that can work. Where like sometimes the probing question one, it's a thin line because there's like, again, like what you said, where it's kind of obvious, like some of the failed ones we had, like asking just around like, oh, what was like some of your biggest challenges? Like people just kind of like, yeah, like you said, they know it. They know that's like one that we tried at some point and it just like flopped and we were like, that didn't work. And so there's those ones there where like, especially if it's going to take work for someone to answer, I think it's hard. I think the 1 to 5 campaign worked really well because like literally someone just could respond with a number. And that's like another, I guess, just psychological thing is like make your message so short that they don't have to think about reading it and they just read it, and make the initial first engagement and response like just need to be really small and simple. And if you're trying to ask someone to like write back like, a qualitative answer to a question, that tends to like, lead to lower engagement. But if you can get someone even just to respond once, then they're much more likely to respond again and again there. And so those are kind of ways that we look at it. And if we're going to do something like that, we're trying to just get that like simple, yeah, I'm interested, or just get someone to raise their hand, and then like you can kind of follow up and keep engaging them there. But yeah, if, like the qualitative ones are something that just kind of feels probing and gets to a question and also takes a lot of work for them to answer, those tend to be the ones where that definitely doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I like just like as a framework to ask a really simple question like this or that, or like you said, a number, because like right now everybody's at home, nobody's going to coffee shops or commuting to work, but most people are on their phones. I mean, even at work, right? They're in meetings and stuff like that. So if they see a message come in and it's on their phone, if they have to respond back with their thumbs, nobody wants to write a long sentence even with their thumbs, right? They're just literally, and I've seen this, and LinkedIn shows you that. It shows you who's active right now with a green button. And then if they're on their mobile app, it shows you, hey, they're active on mobile. And you can see people that respond, you can tell they're treating it like a text message as opposed to an email exchange. And I think if you just kind of approach it that way, then like if I'm texting my wife about dinner, like, hey, do you want to do Mexican or Thai tonight? Yeah, she's like, Thai. That's the answer. Okay, cool. Where do you want to go? Let's go to this place. No, let's go to Thai Nakor. Okay, cool. We'll go there. You want to go there or takeout? Well, let's do takeout. Okay, done. Like that's the conversation. And that's, I think, how people are used to communicating in this world, whether it's in a text exchange with a partner or spouse, or frankly, it's a message exchange on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that point there. And one other thing I'll say, just like with the goal of just getting those small responses, like one of our most successful clients who just closed like hundreds of thousands of dollars of new business from like the leads, it was not just from the leads, but because he was awesome at working with them. And what he would basically do is, and as soon as anyone raised their hand and like said, yeah, I want to see a case study, or, hey, I'm interested, like that was like, it was like, okay, we do all the outbound to get someone to raise their hand. And then they would just like relentlessly go after them basically until they got a no. And so this approach of like doing kind of this, segmentation, this kind of smaller batch outreach, and then as soon as someone raises their hand, then you get personal. Like they were sending like, quick screen share videos with like thoughts for the company. They were calling them, they were emailing them. I think they even did some physical mailers to these people. And so this approach of like get someone to just raise their hand, show interest, and then like stay on top of them and just really go after the ones that show interest, like that worked super well for them, and they did phenomenal with it. So that was, again, just another angle I think that ties into that. If you can get that initial small engagement that shows interest, then like, then work it harder from there and get more personal after that. And with all of this, like you get segmented, you do the outreach, but as soon as someone engages, like get personal, do your background research, even if you're doing this in a decent volume, and just be as personable as you can after that point.
So that's really interesting to hear. And there's something in there that maybe somebody who hasn't done a lot of selling, if it's a startup founder or somebody's worried about, like, I don't want to be like the pushy sales guy. Nobody wants to be the pushy sales guy. I think what's really important about what you described that could get lost by a lot of people is that being pushy is different than being persistent and adding value to someone and showing that you are getting personal. Like you use that word personal a couple of times. It wasn't just like, I'm going to keep sending messages to book a demo just because they answer the question, how happy are you with Salesforce? 1 on a scale 1 to 5. They answer 4. You're not like sending them 17 messages to book a demo. It was like you mentioned like screen shares, talking about sending them a mailing, sending them a case study, sending them content, researching their companies. There's a big difference between being pushy and being personal and persistent. Because then if somebody sees that you did like a 3-minute Loom video of your product relevant to their company and situation now, like that's a lot different than, hey, book a demo, here's my Calendly, book a demo. So it sounds like, I mean, that's what this person was doing. They weren't being pushy, they were being persistent, personal. Is that a fair way to describe?
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, like I've even hopped on calls where people said, oh yeah, so that was probably like a canned message, but then like you got personal right after I like engaged, and like they even they knew that the initial messages were like, kind of a larger outreach, but the value, they were like, yeah, your value proposition resonated, so I still connected and thought it was worth interest learning more. And then like and so like they know, like some people are like fine with it and they know, but if the value proposition actually ties into someone's pain point, like they're still going to engage there. I had a guy who was a contract, like B2B copywriter reach out to me, and I've got a content agency. So I accept and I chat with the guy because it like his value proposition ties in with something that I'm looking for. And that's how it is, I think, for a lot of companies where like they see a lot of noise, but if your value proposition like is good, then that's where like people are going to look and they will still engage with that.
And I think that's also where having, going through the habit of not just connecting with people on LinkedIn, but publishing content, sharing posts, commenting on other people. Because if I get that connection request, if it's somebody that's like, I get a bunch of cold emails or connection requests all the time. And it's pretty easy. I can like, okay, these 80% I'm just like going to ignore and not even pay attention to. And there might be 5 out of 100 that I'll go, oh, okay, I'll accept and, strike up a conversation. But the ones in the middle, what I do personally, and I suspect this is what other people do, is like, okay, I'm not quite sure. It seems interesting. Maybe I go check out this person's profile. Let me go look at their company page here on LinkedIn. And if I'm seeing, okay, this person's publishing articles or has a video or shared some content, and I go, okay, well, this person obviously cares about like adding value. Okay, maybe I'll accept. And it's like those people on the margin are the ones that can really make the difference in getting the campaign connections that you're looking to get in the conversations you want.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's something that I can't stress, like your overall online presence like matters so much through LinkedIn, just because like people research and they look, and like the number of leads we've gotten like on our website from a LinkedIn outreach campaign, like someone didn't even respond to the LinkedIn message, but then they were like doing research and then they like inquire through the site, and I'm like, oh wow, like that was like a lot of clicks you just took. Like the website wasn't even in the message, so like you went to my profile, you went to the company page, you got to the website. Like people do research on that kind of stuff. Or like I'll reach out for one campaign and someone will talk about my other company, and so it's really clear that whenever you're doing outreach, like people, the great thing about LinkedIn is like your profile is your credibility. And so it's just, if your profile is good and you're putting out content and you've got it, looking clean and polished and optimized, like that is a big thing that can definitely help improve results there as well.
It's really funny you said that, because you brought me back to a couple of examples where maybe like somebody liked a post or commented on one of my posts, and then I sent them a connection request, and you can see when it's pending. Like if I send you a connection request, we're not connected, I can go back to your page in a day or 2 or 3 and see that I sent it and it's pending. I can't send another one. But then that person will go to, like you said, gone to our website, maybe watched some videos, downloaded a webinar, and then booked a call through our website. And then we'll go through our kind of process to see if they're a good fit for our program. And then a couple of weeks later or a month or 2 later, they join the program and they're clients. And then I go back to the LinkedIn profile and my connection request is still pending. And I'm like, yep. Dude, now we're like your client now. We should probably connect. Can you go ahead and accept the connection request now? They're like, oh yeah. But to your point, it's like you're just because people don't accept doesn't mean they're not engaging and they're not interested. So the value prop, like you said, is really important. And then being able to have a really strong online presence is what, like that connection request is just the first step of engagement. There's all kinds of other stuff that can be happening downstream if you're doing it right.
Yeah, I literally have almost that exact same story. We signed a client for my content agency last week. Client onboarded today, and it's still pending. So, like, there you go. And it came from LinkedIn, and like literally, it's just she still hasn't accepted it. So it's crazy how that can just like start something, and that's just not the way people engage. Some people just don't use LinkedIn in that same way, but they still might see it and get the message across, and that's what really counts.
Yeah, some people just aren't on, like I said, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I have LinkedIn open more than I have my email box, but not everybody's like that. I mean, not everybody, they have a profile and maybe they check it once a week and they see some message from you and then they go, okay, this is interesting. And then they go to your website and start everything. That's how the process starts. So just because we're on LinkedIn every day doesn't mean everyone we're prospecting to is on LinkedIn every day.
That brings me to another, which is really quick, like simple, like tactical thing. But for a long time, we would just like try to use their full connection message to really try to get a message across. And we eventually started just adding like a signature of the website, especially when like the website was good and like a strong marketing asset.
Mm.
And it's crazy. Like that client I just told you about never accepted, but she went to the website and literally contacted on the contact form and still never accepted that connection request that was sent. And so it's been really interesting to see. And I've got another guy who was doing market research survey, and he just put the link to the survey in his connection, and he's getting amazing engagement there. And so it's just been interesting to see that putting a link in the connection is not necessarily like a bad thing. I always thought it was a bad practice, but I think like a generic connection request, because you can't really get too specific in like 300 characters.
Sure.
I feel like the link lets you say a lot more and lets someone check you out in a way more than you can just say in 300 characters. So that's been an interesting just thing that I have definitely seen help improve results as well.
Yeah, I like that thinking a lot. I think if it's done well, then it's almost like choose your own adventure. It's like, okay, if you want to, like, here's a door, that door being the link. If you want to walk through that door, you can go walk through it. If you just want to accept the request, go ahead and accept it. If you don't want to accept the request, you can ignore it. You're sort of like giving people a sense of control about where they want to go with the attempt to interact with them. And I actually feel like that gives them more of a sense of freedom. Like, I'm not getting spammed, or like, okay, if I accept this connection request, then what? Type of thing. They can almost maybe say, okay, well, before I accept, like I was talking about before, the people on the margin, you go, okay, well, let me go check out this company and see what they're all about. Or let me go look at this 3-minute demo, since there's a Bitly link here. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's at a minimum, it's worth testing. I mean, if you're not doing it, go try it for 50 connections, or try it for a week and just see if you get any click-throughs. And I think Sales Navigator, you can add can't you add a signature in a Sales Navigator message like you can in an email?
I don't know if they, I
Sure.
know they do. I think they have it on InMails. I don't know if it's in the standard messenger.
Okay.
And what's actually interesting is an odd, like other small tactical thing, but making every message look like a hi, so-and-so, like comma, enter, like that actually is another thing we found, like lowers results. And just like treating it, like you said, more like that texting and chatting, even when it's done at a higher volume, it makes it look more personal. And so just not making every message on LinkedIn look like a letter is another just small thing that we found helps improve results as well. And, just jumping straight into a sentence, or even like, poor grammar, just kind of starting a sentence, was checking out your website or something. And, like being a bit more casual with that tends to also help improve results.
Well, I think I can't remember who it was, but there's some marketing dude out there that had a subject line that had a misspelling in the subject line. And it was his most highest engagement subject line ever. And he continued to use it, and people would reply back like, dude, your subject line's misspelled. But he didn't care, because he would just use it because it would catch people's attention. I mean, and I think it happened by accident. I don't think he intentionally misspelled the word. It was like 3 S's in a word, so 2 or something. I can't remember where it was, but I do remember reading about this, and it was the fact that it seemed genuine. It was like, oh, this is like a personal message he just misspelled. And I'm not saying like, okay, well now, how can which word can I misspell to make it seem like I'm on my phone, type of thing. I don't think you should be, try to be conniving about it, but I think it just like goes back to being human and just treating people like, hey, we're just having a quick chat. If you want to have a chat here on LinkedIn, cool. If not, that's fine too. It's just, it's not an email. It's not a place where you have to be super formal. So that's really interesting. So I guess a couple last questions. So number one is like, how do you think about managing the work? Because I think for a lot of people, okay, this sounds good. I could send 75 a day if I wanted to. I've got this Sales Navigator thing. I could spend some money on that, do these custom searches, do my segments, send out these messages. But like, dude, I gotta do demos, or I gotta run the company, or I gotta manage people every day. I gotta worry about funding and everything else. So my first question would be like, if I'm going to do this on my own, what's kind of the minimal amount of work I should be doing on a weekly basis to get some consistent responses? And then as an aside, I know there's a lot of automation tools out there, and I'd be interested in your perspective on, does it make sense to try to automate some of these things, even assuming that we can customize some of the automation a little bit like you would with an email platform. So yeah, that's a couple of questions, but I just want to kind of get your your feedback on those things.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say on the automation tools is definitely do not advise those. LinkedIn is constantly like tracking more and more tools. And so, there was a really popular tool for a while called Leonard. And now if you try to install Leonard and you use it on your profile, you literally get a message on LinkedIn that says, "Hey, we see you're using Leonard. Stop doing this or we're going to ban your profile." So they're tracking a ton of these tools these days. And there's some that maybe still work, but it's just a matter of time before they kind of, get banned or shut down or get tracked as well. So very risky. I would not recommend using any automation tools. The ways that I would look at doing it would be, we see a lot of people do this internally with kind of assistants or anything along those lines. Even virtual assistants in like the Philippines or anything like that. We've seen where you can kind of set up your LinkedIn account on an Amazon workspace in the cloud, which is kind of like a Windows computer that runs on the cloud, and have your team log in there so it doesn't trigger an IP address from the other side of the world or something. That's like one avenue that I've seen people do. And then there's providers like LeadCookie and what we do, where we kind of manage this. And there's a number of companies like us, but I think the biggest thing is if you are looking for an external provider, just make sure that they are doing it by hand and not using automation tools, because there are a lot of them out there that are kind of scrappy and just doing this with software bots, and again, putting your profile at a pretty good risk. But a lot of people I do see doing this with assistants. And even if you're going from doing nothing to doing even, 25 a day or 15 a day with an assistant or something, that is, you can still do a lot if you're getting the, 25 right people every day. Like it doesn't take a lot if you're doing this at a good quality and getting the right people in place and with a good quality message there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, look, even doing like 10 a day, if I do 10 a day on average, maybe I don't do 10 every day, but I do 50 on a Friday or something, or on a Sunday afternoon, whatever that is. We do 50 a week, right? It's 200 a month, and that's over 2,000 new connections in a year. And if you take the long view on that, if, couple this strategy with not just, okay, can I find a new lead into the pipeline to close next month, but the longer view of, well, I'm also publishing content on LinkedIn. I'm sharing posts. I'm posting webinars and recordings and other things to get people a chance to engage with me rather than me trying to engage with them. Then it's like an easy way to build. Just like you would want to build an email list. You don't build an email list thinking, okay, I'm going to get this person's email address today, and then they're going to, sign up for my enterprise software platform by the end of the month. It should be a long view. Now, occasionally, you get an inbound lead and people are like, well, dude, like, we got budget, we got this problem, we're going to take action in the next 3 months. And you do get those bluebirds on occasion, and you'll get those, I think, if you're consistent on LinkedIn. But I think it's more of a longer view. The people that want to engage will engage back. And the ones that don't engage, it's not like you've lost them forever. It's just the start of that journey with them, because just because they don't engage today doesn't mean they won't engage in 3 months or in 2 years.
Yeah, that's totally true. There's a really cool thing you can do on LinkedIn as well, where you can filter your Sales Navigator by first degree connections, so people you're connected with, and you can still use all of those same filters. So, give you an example, like I recently wanted to run a campaign to the event industry with all of this, because there's like a lot of disruption, and I see some opportunity to help there. And so I filter just by first degree connections in the event industry, people that are CEOs. And I look and I'm like, all right, so I'm connected to like 150 CEOs in the event industry. I don't even have to send a connection. I can just immediately message them and send them something now. And sort of reached out and like booked a ton of calls from that of people that were already in my network that I can just reach directly out to with a first degree connection to start that conversation. That's the really cool thing about building this up over time, is all those first degree connections, you have that ability to just directly message them again now, whatever you want.
Yeah. And that list of 150, even if there's 2 that you send a message and they're like, yeah, dude, like, man, Jake, thank you for getting in touch. I've been reading your posts, all what you're doing, and we could definitely use some help right now. Like, cool. Like, very minimal effort, no customer acquisition costs. So it's not like you're paying for ads or paying an SDR. Like, maybe you have a virtual assistant or your assistant that's like building up those contacts. But if you just think about it, you're not trying to sell 150. You're just trying to get like 2 in the next couple of weeks. You're like, cool. And I was thinking of it also, again, like longer view, like take the Chicago manufacturing example that has been the thread here, where if I'm now all of a sudden, maybe I'm going to a conference in Chicago, and now not everybody that's a COO of a manufacturing company in Chicago is going to come to that conference. But if I do that save search, or I do that search on Navigator, and I realize, okay, I got 26 connections in the greater Chicago area of COOs of manufacturing companies. Well, hey, Bill, I'm heading to Chicago for the XYZ conference, and I'm going to have some time the day before the conference or the day after the conference. Would it make sense for me to swing by the office? So now all of a sudden you can start booking out appointments for yourself, or running webinars for people. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can slice and dice that audience in a way, but the audience is only useful if you have them as connections, and that goes back to why you should do your 10 a day or 20 a day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a super powerful thing. We've seen people do that as well, where, hey, I'm going to be in town for these dates or anything like this. Would love to connect. Might be a little hard right now in the COVID times, but again, another super high converting, effective one in the normal world. So
yeah, man, I'm kind of itchy. I want to get off this call and start like hanging out on LinkedIn. I got like a bunch of calls the rest of the afternoon, and now I'm bummed because I want to go hang out on LinkedIn, like send some messages, or just go, do some searching on Navigator and see if there's somebody I can help. It's been really, really good, man. This has been fun and highly informative. So I mentioned earlier on in the conversation about, you've got a free guide. I don't know if that's the best place for people to go, but if somebody wants to learn more about LeadCookie, or get some more information about how you might be able to help them with some of the stuff that we're talking about, what would you suggest that they do?
Yeah, if you just head over to leadcookie.com, that is the best place. There'll be a pop-up for that guide that'll show up there at some point. Or if you go to the resources section, in addition, the guide is probably like the best place to start. It's kind of our comprehensive like strategies and like all of our scripts and the different frameworks we use. But we also have an entire video library where our team will literally screen share like, hey, here's cool things you can do on Sales Navigator. Here's how you can do like Boolean searches, or this is like how to work leads, or some like tricks and tips and ways to use the platform. And so we're consistently putting out content there, and we just really try to be like the leaders and cutting edge, and we share it all and put everything out there. So that's just leadcookie.com would be the best place to go for everything.
Yeah, 100%. Like on both the ebook and the articles, like I said, I downloaded the ebook myself just to check it out. And a lot of times you download, somebody tells you it's an ebook, and all it says is, oh, you should do this. Like, get personal with your connection request. Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Whereas in yours is like, no, here's the script. Or it says, once they connect, you should engage with them. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out, like how to engage. And you've got a script for that. Like, hey, here are some questions you could ask. Here's a probing question. Here's how to offer a case study. So it's 100% like actionable stuff that's in there is really good. And the blog posts that you've got a post right now, how to handle outreach during COVID-19. You guys posted this way back in mid-March when all this stuff first started to hit. And I like this, in this article, you've got like a red light, yellow light, green light system for thinking through when I should outreach and when should I wait. So just those two things, I think, read that article, download that ebook. People are gonna be really glad that they did. So props to you for pumping out the content.
Thanks. I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, dude, like I said, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for making time, especially in a time that is busy for a lot of us for different reasons. So tons of great stuff. As soon as we get the episode up onto the podcast world, we'll let you know, and you can share it out with your group and your tribe of people on LinkedIn, wherever else they might be. I'd love to do this again in a few months, just to see, there's going to be this ebb and flow of the market. Like right now, people are still stabilizing, and then at some point there'll be this new normal, whatever that normal looks like. Normal doesn't mean back to the way they were. It's just like we're going to be in a more stable place, and it'll be interesting to see how the outreach might change again for August or September, after the first couple months of this thing. So maybe we should do a part 2 just to see how your strategies have changed and what you've been learning over these first few months after COVID.
Yeah, I'm up for it anytime. This was awesome. You were a phenomenal interviewer and really good questions. So I enjoyed this as well. I hope it gave some good insights. Yeah, I'm definitely happy to do a part 2 anytime and dive more. And like I said, we've got our pulse on a lot of accounts, and we have this mastermind group with other agencies. So we're seeing a lot of the trends very quickly. So we're always on the front lines of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool, man. I love it. Thanks, Jake. Well, look, I'll let you get back to your day. Thanks for spending time with me and people listening. And we'll do it again soon. Talk soon.
Awesome.
Okay.
Sounds good. Let me know when it goes live and I'll share it out as well.
All right, Jake. Have a good one. Talk to you.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.